Hey, good afternoon, and welcome to this edition of Business Basics. My guest this afternoon is Rob Decker with Axiom Consultants right here in Iowa City. And Rob, first of all, welcome. Glad to have you here today.
Thank you.
And Rob, you've got a great story. From what I picked up, is that you and one of your best friends, Brian, you guys worked for the city of Iowa City for a number of years and said, you know what, we could do this on our own. So how'd that come about, Rob?
Yeah, we did both work for the city. I'm from Iowa City and Brian is from Davenport originally, and we both ended up at the city through our various ways when we were pretty young. And yeah, in 2002, we met each other, so almost 2 decades ago.
Wow.
And became really good friends at that time and have grown our friendship in those almost 2 decades to being, we spend more of our time together than we do with anybody else in our lives, except maybe our spouses and kids, and you could probably argue just as much as them. So it helps to like each other a lot. We have tremendous respect for each other, and obviously care for one another very much. And yeah, I would say that he's my business partner, but he's also my best friend. So that's a very unique situation for sure.
And so what did you guys do at the city, to be clear?
So at the city we worked in, all cities are similar and they're different. They all kind of have the same thing, but in what I mean by different is they all a lot of them call them the same things and a lot of them call them something slightly different. But at Iowa City, they call it the engineering division. Okay. Engineering division is part of public works. And we worked for the engineering division at Iowa City. And we were sort of, our titles, Brian was a senior civil engineer and I was a senior construction inspector. So our titles were sort of, sorry, my alerts go off sometimes.
It's all right, no worries.
If I turn the volume off, then I can't hear you. So, but I like to tell people we're sort of in charge of the inside and the outside stuff. So I was in charge of kind of project management and construction of executing city projects, and he was in charge. Obviously, the city engineer was in charge, but Brian was pretty much the senior most engineer on staff at that time. He probably would be city engineer now if we were still there. But he was the senior engineer on staff, and so he was in charge of managing consultants, managing designs, things like that. So we were sort of the senior guys. Obviously, when we started, we were a little lower, but by the time I'm speaking of, by the time we left, we were right. The sort of head field and office guys, and we sort of tag teamed on a lot of projects together to execute them and to see them through design, to manage them, all of that good stuff. So that translated really well into what we do now.
Well, yeah. So how did that idea hatch? I guess that's the big question, right? At what point did you guys say, we could probably do this better, quicker, faster, or more our way on our own? How did that all come about?
Yeah, it's a good question. It came about by I was just going to say like a lot of people. I don't know if it is like a lot of people because I haven't talked to a lot of people about it, but it came about by initially with us realizing that we had a very good friendship and realizing that we like to spend a lot of our time together outside of work, still do. And I think that when you do that and you spend so much of your time with someone, you realize you have a great respect for them. And we started to kind of joke around about we should start our own company together. We should start our own business together. I think a fair number of people do that. You kind of start joking about it. You kind of start tossing it around, and then what happens is age starts happening. I mean, that's a dumb statement. Age always happens, but middle age starts approaching. Maybe that's a better way to put it. And you just kind of realize, like, hey, if I'm going to do this, not to say that there aren't young people that go out and are entrepreneurial. There certainly are. But in the case of when it unfolds like this, like it did for us, that time starts approaching, and you just kind of say, like, if I'm going to do this, I better do it soon, because as I get older, there's going to be all the natural impediments, right? That we all understand. So.
Yeah, very fascinating. So tell me about that partnership that you guys developed. I mean, you guys are close friends, really close friends. But, we all have to put protections in place when we start up a business, especially it might be our spouse, it might be our best friend, it might be a relative. How did you guys form that relationship so you could still protect your friendship?
Yeah, well, you kind of do it, just kind of speaking off the cuff, I guess you kind of do it in two ways, right? You do, and I kind of have this answer for a number of things. I don't know that I necessarily have a great roll into another one, but as I formulate this answer in my head, I know that we do this in project management at our company too. And I sort of always describe, there's sort of the political or technical side of things, and then there's sort of the emotional side of things.
Right.
And on the political / technical side, it's not really political in this case, but on the technical side, you do the normal things. You go to a lawyer, and you, in our case, it was another friend of ours.
It works.
It works very well, and you actually, I would really encourage that, because a good lawyer will talk to you and engage with you in a way that doesn't feel very lawyerly like. In fact, I think we had a couple beers, a couple different times we went and had beers, and they just kind of learn your story and learn who you are, and that helps them to formulate the actual legal paperwork for a company that is based on the principles that you want. And it can be as hard-nosed as you want. It's essentially a prenup, right? And
right.
And those things can be difficult decisions, but you detail the things that you're really concerned about, and you don't worry so much about the ones that you aren't. And then the lawyer steps in and says, well, you should be really concerned about that, whether you think you are or not.
Right.
And in other areas, they're like, very good, very good. That's a fine way to approach it if you want to do it in that way. And so that's the technical side, and that's really, really important. That's the most important. You have to get that tucked away and put to bed, and you have to do it quickly, and you do it right away. We involved our spouses with it as well. Our sort of pairs of us are close as well.
Sure.
And our spouses will get involved sometimes, not all the time, but a lot of times they're kind of like, I don't care about it. But during these kind of initial heavier decisions, they would, or we would bring them in on the second or third meeting to sort of give an outsider's perspective. But then, on our own side of things, we just, you talk about it a lot. You can't be off the cuff with this stuff. You have to, from business planning, and we actually have business plans. Iowa City is a great resource, because the small business the university has an affiliation with the Small Business Administration, and they're literally like, I'm looking to my left, they're like a block away from us in what used to be the old Capitol Mall.
Right.
They're in there, and from going to talk to them, which we did, and showing them your business plan, and they will help you, to talking to a financial institution, which we have a very close partnership with one of them locally.
Right.
Very, very tight partnership. They're actually a client of ours too, but you have to talk through stuff a lot, and you have to maintain your friendship. It's hard to do, not hard to maintain your friendship. It's hard to like force yourself in. It's the same way as marriage, right? It's like you do all the tasks, you do all the things, and you have to set aside time to like have the grandkids watch the kids, which we were just talking about, and make sure that you can go out and just eat a dinner and have a conversation, or get away from things and talk. And you obviously want to talk about work a lot,
right?
Because it kind of becomes your life, but you have to try and, if you can, try and pull yourself out of that as much as you can. So just talking, remembering why you got there, remembering that you are friends. That stuff all sounds silly. Like, why should I have to remember that we're friends? Or, well, you start a business and you'll see pretty quick that.
Well, you're right. And we talk about that so much with business coaching, is that you got to spend some time working on your business, because business in and of itself is going to happen. You guys as engineers, you could talk engineering all day long, all night long over beer, right? I mean, it's cool. It's fun, right?
Yep.
But you got to have those hard talks, like a buy-sell arrangement, or what happens if one partner passes away unexpectedly? Who's going to absorb that? Are you now in partnership with that person's spouse? How's that set up? And those are difficult talks. Difficult if we make them difficult. Otherwise, they could just be, like you said, just a technical talk. Let's just get this stuff ironed out and be done with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And we have had those talks. We've had the ones that you're speaking of. And one of the nice things about Brian and I is that we try to be very courteous of one another. I think we're pretty good at it, and say, like, you always want to say, I would do this and I would do that. And it's human nature to say that. And you have to understand that in two things, that in saying that, one, that it's understood that it's your opinion. We still try to say it as much as I can. Well, I blah, 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 would do this. Of course, that is my opinion. Brian's opinion counts just as much, if not more than mine does. And you have to remember to say those things, but you also have to understand that when the other person is saying those things, that they're not implying that it's just them, and that you have to have that trust in them. Because it can become, the day-to-day wears on you, and financials wear on you, and all the things. The universe is working very hard to, Neil deGrasse Tyson's podcast I listen to called Star Talk, says the universe is trying in a million ways to kill us at any given minute. Like, we don't need to be killing each other, because the universe is trying to do that for you. And he lists all these funny things, but it's like, I think of that and I think, you don't need to try to make running a business hard. That's all there, and the universe is going to try to grind you down in 50,000 different ways. So don't exacerbate that problem. Figure out the things that you can work on that help those things. Don't pile on the negative stuff, because it's coming regardless.
Oh, right. So true. And that's where getting those hard talks out of the way is so important. And then we can talk about motivational things and how we're going to make our businesses greater, because all the other, like you said, all the other stuff happens anyway. I don't care if you're making 100,000 a year or 100 million a year, there's going to be finance issues that always come into play.
Yep.
And it just is, right?
That's
and
right.
So we prepare ourselves for those times. We educate ourselves as much as we possibly can. But we get up every day. It's always sun up, right? It's always another great day ahead of us.
That's right.
We have to be that way. So Rob, tell me about what you guys do. You guys are engineers, but specifically, what do you guys do?
So, I think about this question a lot, because I have to tell people a lot, because any business owner is trying to meet with people and answer the exact question that you just asked me. So
Right.
The thing that I want to, usually convey to someone, and the way that I would convey it to you is, I can come out and I can say, we do mechanical engineering. We can put a duct in a ceiling, and that's great, but that's going to, bore people to death. So what we do is, and I'll tell you a little bit about kind of how we do it. I'm not going to go way into detail on that, but what we set out to do, we were very specific about what we set out to do. And that was, there's a number of engineering companies in Iowa City. There's a number of them in any city that you go to,
right,
of 50,000 people or more, right? There, a middling sized city in the United States is going to have multiple engineering firms. There are going to be plenty of good ones. They're all going to know what they're doing, for the most part, and they're all going to do similar things. They're all going to help you put a road down, or they're going to help you, put a steel beam in a wall to hold something up, whatever the case may be. And what we set out to do, it's hard in 2020, because the more years that go by, the more ideas that people have had. So one of the things that we wanted to do, and some of it came about organically, but we were pretty specific about what we wanted to do, and that was, and we wrote it into our company handbook for our employees. There's actually a letter at the beginning of it that I wrote with Brian that describes kind of this question. And we wanted to have a middling sized company. And what I mean by that is we set the number of about 20.
Okay.
and we wanted to do, we wanted to be able to do things in a way that we had the small group that were, and there's probably another question you have for me later where I can go into this a little bit more, but they, where people, everybody knew each other's names, everybody knew each other's spouses' names, and everybody knew each other's kids' names. And where we were leaning on each other as a group of friends and family, and providing, you know, good service to clients, doing consistently excellent work as a small company. And on top of that, what we wanted to do, or some people would say 20 is not small. 20 certainly is not big. So I would call it mid-length size, but
yeah,
but
no, it's good size.
But we also capped that. We said it's actually in our literature. It's like, we want to be a group of about 20 people. Our goal is not to grow. And that is not, I would say that's not, there are plenty of engineering companies who have that same goal, but the vast majority of them, that's not the goal. The vast majority is to continue to grow, continue to grow revenue, continue to grow clients, you know, and on and on and on. And that's very common with all businesses, right? But is it sustainable? We all ask ourselves that, right? Like, everything can't grow unchecked, unsustainably. It doesn't work. You run it, whether it's, you know, running out of resources and industrial, whatever the case may be. So our goal was to provide a full service engineering firm. That's the next piece. And what I mean by full service engineering firm is, because a lot of people say, well, what's that mean? And I don't mean to like get rid of the other engineering disciplines, industrial or chemical or biomedical or any of those. But what I mean by full service engineering firm is all the disciplines that we provide an engineering package to someone who wants to do a construction project. So if you're going to build a house, or if you're going to build a building, or if you're going to build a development of roads to put buildings on, or if you're going to remodel and you do all those same things, but remodel them, that's still construction too. It doesn't have to be new construction. But if you're going to construct something, right, and have a project, then you need engineering. And the on the engineering side, the you know, there's also architecture. There's architecture and engineering. But as far as the engineer, we are not architects. But as far as that engineering side, we can provide a complete package. So I don't like the term one-stop shop, but because I don't like what some of those one-stop shop stores represent. They represent kind of big and sort of personality-less, right? And that's the opposite of what we're trying to be. But we are a one-stop shop. So you should be able to walk in our door and provide all of the engineering capability you need as an architect, if that's the case, but as a client, to not have to go round up 2, 3, sometimes even 4 different firms. It's literally all here. Right. And so to provide a small package, full service engineering firm that is not looking to grow like crazy, and I guess that's kind of implied by small package, but that is the unique fit that we are. And it's worked really, really well. I don't claim like I was like, oh, there's a hole, you know, in that service. There's a hole there that we can exploit. I guess everybody does that a little bit because you like, I think this can be successful, and I think this can be successful. I guess it's inherent that there's some sort of a hole or some sort of a need, but we didn't spring on it because we were like, oh my gosh, I can't believe nobody's done this yet. It was just our idea and what we thought we could do. And I will say, I don't know of any other firms that do that. I've asked other people, and they're like, they have a hard time thinking of it. There was one that somebody came up with that not a business, but I don't even remember who it was now, but that's what we are in a nutshell. And we're more things too that I think some of your other questions will lead into, but.
Well, a takeaway from this for me, Rob, is so people start a business because they want to make a lot of money. Okay. And then that's where they get into, we're going to start one model, then another one, then another one. Exactly what you're talking about, what you don't want. But the biggest takeaway for me here is that you and Brian decided early on, before you started your company, what you wanted. I mean, you had it wasn't revenue driven. Of course, we got to make money. That's what we do. We're in business. We all got to make money. I get that. But that wasn't the driving force. The driving force was this idea of we want to be a mid-sized company. We want to be there and available for our customers. We want to be that friendly, personable one-stop shop where we can address all of your construction engineering and take care of you, but always be approachable, right? And that is vastly different from a lot of the other engineering firms out there. That we'll have an office in Iowa City, then we'll put one in Memphis, Tennessee, and one down in Orlando, Florida, and bam, 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 and that's not what you guys are after. You guys want to stay contained, small, personable, family oriented. But the fact that you know what you want is the huge takeaway for some people, because honestly, some people start a business and they really don't know what they want. They don't know what they want to look like or feel like 5 years from now. You do.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. I think a lot of people do that. They find something they'd like to do and they sort of organically grow into it. And they sort of pick and choose different things, and some work, some catch, some don't, and they probably evolve who they are based on that. It's not that we don't do that. We do that. But you're exactly right. We had a very definitive approach that we wanted to do, and we did it, and we are still doing it. It has not changed very much at all. And we worked, Brian and I have worked for a handful of those firms, 3 or 4 different ones. That are what you describe, and not that there's anything wrong with that. They that's their model and that works for them. And there's a lot of those engineering companies. The ENR news record, 400 or 500, I forget what it is. Contractors are, I think, 400, and engineers are 500. Why they have different amounts, I don't know. But that list is all the big firms in the country. Right. And it's the goal of a lot of those firms to achieve, to get on that list, and that's how they do it. You're right. They buy smaller firms. They open offices in different locations, and a great firm here in Iowa City, fantastic firm that everybody knows, Shive Hattery, started here. It started in the Iowa City, Cedar Rapids corridor, and there's something like 10 offices. So the local success story, Axiom Consultants, who's in the top 50 in the world, started in Cedar Rapids, Iowa City, and they're now headquartered down in like Olathe, Kansas, but they still have an office in Cedar Rapids, and they're gigantic, and they do those companies do great work, but they're doing a different thing, right? They want to expand, right. They want to add sectors and divisions and offices, and that's not what we're doing.
No, I mean, that's fine. You're right. There is no right or wrong answer.
No,
as a business owner, we just have to know what we want.
That's right. And
that's okay.
There's room for both. There's room for both types of business to exist, I think. So, and they do.
Oh, for sure.
They do. Yeah. They do around here anyway.
Yeah, that's right. So. I love that. So you found you created your own niche. I mean, you're right. You didn't find a hole, say, well, we could fill that hole. It's like, no, there's room for more engineering. And this is, if we're going to go into it, these are our rules. This is how we want it to look like.
It's a really good way to put it. I haven't ever heard it said like that before, but that's a good, we made our own niche. So we didn't find a niche to go snuggle into, which I think is pretty common in business. Mm-hmm. We made our own. We kind of took a shovel and carved our own out.
Right. That is beautiful. It works. I mean, it's working, right? So you have about roughly 20 employees, give or take?
Yeah, we have 18, but perfect. We're actually looking for 2. So
okay.
There you go.
That's your magic number, 20. So, I always ask everybody, how are they impacted by COVID-19? Honestly, some were impacted very negatively. Others were impacted very positively by COVID-19. What's your takeaway?
Yeah, we were impacted in both ways. So, I'll start with the bad first. So with COVID, negatively, we were impacted the same way that a lot of folks are. And that's been the hardest part of dealing with it too, is it took away our normal mode of operation, which is very collaborative, very in-person. We have a lot of mentoring that goes on, a lot of in-person meetings with clients. It impacted all of that in the ways that everybody knows that I don't need to go into, but it made us more like this, like you and I are doing right now. There's a lot of this going on. And with our employees alone, but also with clients. And that's, thankfully that can be done. You know, back in the day, you could, you know, not that long ago, even when I was, you know, coming out of college, AOL 2.0, you couldn't do this stuff, you know. You couldn't do it 10 years after that. You know, it's only within the last 10 years or so that this stuff is, and really probably even within the last 5 that it's gotten really good.
Right.
And that's just luck. That's just blind luck that has helped a lot, and it has saved. You know, as engineers, as designers, we're putting, our product is like this pile that you can see behind me is paper, right?
Right.
Still in 2020, it's paper. It's a lot of it's PDFs, but it's still a lot of printed paper. Our job is to make plans and to make specifications and a whole bunch of other things, but all of it boils down to that stuff. And thank you. But that is our job, is to, at the end of the day, what we call them deliverables. A lot of people probably call them that, but that's what we call them as well. And our job is to produce deliverables, and deliverables mean, in today's world, pretty much working on a computer. And so we can still do that remotely. The deliverables, well, I was going to kind of spin off into another thing. Deliverables for us aren't just paper, though. They're also service and you know, providing things to the client that are really unique, we think. But on the good side, I guess not on the good side, but on the not negatively impacted side, yeah, a lot of I think you see it. I don't know what all the reasons are for it, right? Look, I'm just a small local guy with a company of 18 people, so I don't claim to know a ton of stuff or have all the answers. But on a personal level, one of the things that I'll give you an analogy. On a personal level, one of the things that my wife and I have done a lot over these past 8 months since March is a lot of home projects and a lot of kind of doing things around the house or getting something done by a contractor or getting a new couch, you know, things like this.
Oh yeah.
And why do we do that? Well, one, because we were at home a lot thinking about it. And two, because we had, and we're very blessed in the sense, I realize that I don't want to diminish what a lot of people are going through, because there's, you know, this is specifically related to the business issue, but we had money that we were going to use for our summer vacation and things like that we didn't have to, weren't able, or made the choice we weren't going to use it for that anymore. And we turned it and we used it for projects. And the analogy I would make, and I'm simplifying it very much, but I think a lot of people are looking at projects and things that they want to do and are sort of rearranging how they think in terms of the whole telecommuting thing and what does brick and mortar mean for an office. And there's just a lot of introspection going on industry-wide. And you're seeing this huge blossoming of construction and development and all of those things. And not that that's always the best environmentally or sustainability wise, or, you know, we're not here to talk about that stuff. I'm happy to do it sometime. But
you're right, Rob. I mean, this summer especially, you couldn't buy a pool if you tried, because they were, I mean, all the pool companies in the area were, sorry, we'll get to you next summer because we're full up, right? People are adding on to their homes, or putting on that other bedroom that they had talked about for years, because now you're right, they're not spending their money on vacation. So they're calling you guys up and saying, hey, can you engineer this thing out for me? Because my wife's getting on me and I got to get this addition put on for her. You know what I mean?
You're absolutely right. And a lot of those business owners, a lot of our clients it's nothing more than what we were doing. I'm again simplifying it, but you're absolutely right. Some of them have partners, 2 or 3 partners, and they're an LLC and they need to build an office building or something else. It's the same stuff. It's the same. And so we saw an initial, and I think a fair number of people saw this. There was an initial sort of depression in that March and April timeframe. Work-wise, we were very busy because we had a lot of work lined up from prior to March. But we could see it. We could see it coming in March and April. And I'm like, I bet in that June, July timeframe, we're going to see this. And that's exactly what happened. And so the summer was this sort of depression. I'm not speaking mentally, maybe for some people, but
Yeah. Economic depression. That's right.
economic depression. And I think everybody is aware of that, and work-wise slowed down. I know it for other people. I know many contractors had that happen. Many contractors reached out to us and were mentioning it. But now about that August timeframe, maybe early September, but right in there, it's really ramped up and things are very busy right now. They're very busy for a lot of engineering firms. And if engineering firms are busy, then what it tells you is construction is busy, because most construction needs to be engineered. So in that sense, it's been quite good. The PPP program helped out with small businesses like ours. Especially small businesses like ours. Small businesses below 500 people, we could debate the merits of, is that really a small business? But with companies like ours of 18 people, those things are very helpful. And that gives you some peace of mind. It was a very nice program for a lot of folks that own small companies like myself. And overall, we are very lucky. We are very lucky. A lot of people have not, been as lucky. I think something like a fifth of small businesses across the country have shuttered,
unfortunately.
And unfortunately, absolutely. And I live in that world now, so I don't like hearing that, but we've been very lucky.
Right. Good. So other than COVID, the past 3 years, what's the biggest learning that you could share with somebody else? What's the one business tactic or that blinding flash of the obvious that you guys have discovered that you'd want to pass on to somebody else?
Biggest warning, did you say? Was that the?
Not warning, not necessarily a warning, but just what's the learning that you had, that the biggest education piece, like, oh, why did I think of this, or something along those lines?
Yeah. I think of it, I would say this, this stuff, this business advice is something that can become so cliched and so full of, let me get out my book and flip through my 5 things of advice.
Right.
I guess the best thing that I can speak to is somebody who, I don't consider myself some kind of a business expert. We seem to be doing pretty well. We're 3 years in, which I think is past the average. I think there's probably a lot of people who when we first started doing this were like, who are they and what are they doing, and things like that. So hopefully we do know what we're doing a little bit, and our success is a sign of that. But I guess to answer your question, I would say communication is the single biggest thing we do. So, and especially with an engineering company, as I was talking about earlier, deliverables are what we put out. Deliverables are what make us money. We have stages of those things that we get out, and our fees and all that stuff are based on that. Same with a lawyer, same with a doctor, with the products that they're putting out. But communication is key for us, and I think that's part of the reason that we decided to stay small, or vice versa. Maybe part of the reason why we're so successful in being small is that it allows us to communicate in ways that other companies can't. So all companies, I'll speak with all engineering companies. And again, I'm not disparaging any engineering companies. There are gazillions of good ones, but they will all tell you that they're very hands-on. They will all use that phrase, and not just them. A lot of companies will. We're very hands-on, and we communicate very well. And I would say those same things about our company. But what works for us, and the advice that I would give to someone in working for us, and I wouldn't give them the advice, have a company of 20 people. I might give them that advice based on my story. But if they say, well, why have a company of 20 people? Then I would say, because that allows you to be in it and to communicate. And by in it, I mean, I'm in it all the time. I'm not dissociated from my work. I'm not delegating things down to other people. I do everything that I would expect my staff to do for the most part.
Right.
And I do a lot of things I don't expect them to do. Like, I'm our IT manager. I do a lot of our HR. I wear a lot of hats, as any small business owner does.
They do. You're exactly right.
And you know, IT is a huge one. That's all me. That's 100% me. And I do all of that. And that's a load of work for an engineering company in and of itself. But I'm in it, and I am talking to the client every day, and I am managing many of our teams. We have some senior folks who also do that stuff, but I don't ever want to get away from that. And that is what will happen as you get bigger. And we once had someone, you know, give us some very wise words. Brian and I did give us some very wise words, which I still think of today. And that was, enjoy it now while you can, because it won't last forever. And what they were alluding to was this camaraderie that you have with your staff and with being a small company, and all that stuff. And it's great advice. It was well spoken from someone who's very knowledgeable, and their company was going a different route. And like I said, fantastic, you know, great company, run very well, doing all kinds of incredible things with incredible employees. And not that those employees aren't friends on levels and all of the things that any company has, but it really stuck with me. And I think it stuck with me. I don't know if that's the word, that's the phrase that stuck with me in creating our company. Maybe it's probably more a part of a grand whole, would be my guess. But that stuck with me in a way to say, like, well, I don't want to let it, I don't want to get to the point where I say, well, I'm really going to enjoy it now because it's not going to last forever. Well, why can't it last forever?
Right.
Why can't that camaraderie and that way that we work stay like this?
Right.
And that's the question that our company would ask. Why can't it? And so the advice I would give to somebody is communicate, because what it allows you to do when you're that size and when you run this way is I am talking like this with owners all the time, and they're talking with the owner. They say to me, like, I'm doing little tasks, I'm doing big tasks. I don't care. I don't care about any of that stuff. I'm not delegating most of it. You know, I'm managing teams, and I love doing that. And Brian loves doing it too. And he's really good at it.
And to flesh this out, communication is organically a part of your culture. And when you talk about communication, you were talking about real communication on a level with each other, you and Brian, but also with all of your employees. It's honest, it's productive, it's impactful, but you also have that communication with your clients as well. And that's not true of everybody. That's not true of every organization. There are people who say, I'll get back to you, and it might be a week, 2, 3 weeks before they ever hear back. It's like, did I not have a phone call with this person?
Yeah.
You know, they said they were going to do the diagrams. That was true with us this year. We were looking at a pool, and they said, yeah, we'll get back to you in a week. It was 2 months that went by. I mean, even if you're backed up, even if your workload is over the top, if you tell a potential client, hey, I'll get back to you in a week, and you haven't made any progress because you've been swamped, you still get back to them in a week and tell them that. Yeah.
100%. That's a great point. That's exactly right. Sometimes one of the phrases Brian and I use with our staff as we're talking to them about this, because we preach this stuff to our staff, is sometimes all the client wants is for you to get back to them and acknowledge that they're breathing.
Right.
Like
Exactly.
And I will tell you, it is very common in the engineering world. It's common in a lot of worlds, but it's especially common. I probably say it's common in the engineering world because that's the world that I live in. But it is very common in the engineering world to hear from a client like, I'm very frustrated because I was using so-and-so, or I was working with so-and-so, and they don't even necessarily give you a name, you know, another engineer. And they wouldn't get back to me. I wouldn't hear from them. And I'm like, that's just not acceptable. And it is, Brian and I are not beat our head against the wall, 90 hours to the grindstone, we're not like that. Anybody that meets us would tell you, but it doesn't take very long. I will say texting, as a 47-year-old, I tell people that I text like a teenager, but texting is a huge, because it's an immediate, non-invasive communication method. Like phones are invasive, right? You have to stop, you have to step out, people can hear you talking. They're great. You can't substitute anything for a phone call because the tone context of a communication cannot be communicated through a text. But what texting allows you to do is very quickly juggle and flex your communication and acknowledge to people, and not to bother them, not to insert yourself into their schedule, but to say, hey, give me a call when you have some time, or here's a quick update on that progress. That stuff makes, I don't even think about it anymore. I just do it all the time, and it doesn't bother me. I'm not on my phone all the time at home. I'm not staring I'm not like that, but I will pick it up, check it every once in a while. And if a client is reaching out to me, even on a Saturday or something, and they just want a quick one hitter, that stuff makes a huge difference.
It does. Yeah. I mean, I have clients that will text me at 11:30 at night, and they just have a quick question or a quick thought they want to share. And we both know, they don't expect me to text them back right away. I won't necessarily, or I might wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning and say, hey, just think about this, shoot that text out there. They can get back to me when they get back to me. But that's a beautiful form of communication. But it's that communication piece, Rob, that allows you guys to stay small. I mean, 20 employees, but it's also the reason why you want to stay small, is because you want to have that level of communication with everybody on your team and your client base.
Yeah, we don't want to lose. We'll substitute horsepower for service. So we are very service-based, meaning, and that's not to disparage our deliverables. I would never do that, but I will tell you that a client will much more remember how you take care of them just in this way than they will. Did you have my, I wish that storm sewer would have been different in such and such a way. And I'm not saying that in a way like, oh, well, we're all loosey goosey with the design because we're all about this communication. That's not it at all. We're engineers. We're very anal and meticulous by nature, like all engineers are, right? We want to do things very precisely and design them in a certain way and do all of those things. But I can go out and I can design a storm sewer pipe that'll evacuate water from an area the same way that 10 other firms in town can do it.
Right.
We can all do it, and we can all figure out how to do drainage. We can all figure out how to do drainage designs, or I'm just using one example, but whatever, right? And solve those problems. We can all solve them in the same way. But but if you go to all 10 of them and talk to them, go to 10 clients who use those 10 different firms and talk to them, they're all going to give you different examples of how that was achieved. And at the end of the day, it's going to range from, at the end of the day, I got it, but it was literally just a piece of paper and that was nothing else, to one where it was like, I was involved from the start. We talked about it. I gave them my 2 cents. They explained what they were doing. I could get a hold of them at any time. They let me know when there were red flags, and I understood why there were red flags. You hear people, again, to go back to an analogy that a lot of people can relate to, you hear people that are doing a project at home and they get very frustrated because they have a contractor on their house, a general contractor who's building them a house or remodeling or whatever. And they're like, they just disappear for 2 weeks. And I didn't know where the heck they were. And then they showed up and they didn't build this the way I wanted to. You hear that. People watch all these TV shows. I love them. I love these. I watch them all the time. And This Old House, or all the ones on all of them. People love that, or a lot of people do. And that stuff's a microcosm into the same stuff, though, right? It's the same. They're still contractors. They're still dealing with a client. They're still, those things are like silly and funny, and I joke about them as much as the next guy. But at the end of the day, it's the same stuff. It's that client who has a 3-story building. Maybe that's a little bit bigger thing than your house, but is it? Yeah. I mean, your house is pretty emotional and by the way, houses these days cost almost as much as commercial construction, but
no kidding.
It's those same things. And I hear that I have so many friends that text me and they're like, hey, I need a recommendation for this. I need a recommendation for that. My wife would laugh if you asked her this question, because she'd be like, for 20 years, I know literally hundreds of people who text Rob all the time asking him for advice with this stuff, and I love it. I absolutely love it, and I love it because I like it that they're asking for my opinion. I also like helping them with that problem, but I get why they're asking, because it's such a problem in the industry in to be out of the loop and to not feel like you're getting the service that you need.
Exactly. And the other advantage that you have by staying smaller, aside from the communication, is you have a balanced family life, for crying out loud. I mean, 6 o'clock, we're down in Hatchet Jack's having a beer. I mean,
Right.
we're not working till 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. We're able to contain this and still have a nice balance, right?
That's right. Work-life balance is also written into our company handbook. It is in there, and we absolutely mean it. We have a lot of things written into our handbook about how this company was created for the employees, not for Brian and I to get rich. It doesn't have our name in it. That's intentional.
Yep.
A lot of engineering companies have the names of the people who, most of them do, as a matter of fact, if you go around and if you Google them. That was a very intentional choice on our part, was to keep our name out of the company. 100%. We did not, this isn't about Brian and I, this is about I think I even have something about this on our website. I should know because I wrote it, but it's something about, this company is a vehicle, and it's a vehicle that it's like a clown car. No, I won't use that vehicle. It's more like a school bus.
There you go.
And the school bus can hold, it has 20 people on it, and that vehicle allows those 20 people to get to where they're going. And Axiom is a vehicle for a very specific small amount of people to have a good work-life balance, to have a good relationship with their life, and to give them a tool. The tool in the case of our time and place in history is money, the dollar for us, and all the dollar is a tool to go get the coffee beans that you want because you enjoy sitting on your deck drinking a coffee. Well,
that's right.
Axiom will provide you with the tool to get that. And at the end of the day, that's what Brian and I set out to make this place, was a tool to give, a small group of people a good life.
I love that. I love it. All right. I kept you way longer than I told you I would. So don't go away. Hang on a second. Hey, thank you again, Rob. It's been a pleasure.
Sure.
My special guest today, Rob Ducker with Axiom Consultants. Google them, based in Iowa City. And the website will tell you much more than I can tell you right now. But again, Rob, thank you very, very much.
You bet.